Hello and welcome to today's video on Adobe Lightroom Classic. Today's video will be about the spot removal tool. This is the first in a series of videos about the tools in Lightroom that are local adjustment tools, so you can specify where they apply so they don't apply to the whole image as the global adjustment tools do that we've discussed previously. Like the basic panel is global, HSL is global, and split toning are all global. So this set of tools are going to be local, so you can just apply them exactly where you want. The first one we're going to discuss is called the Spot Removal Tool. It's in the toolbar on the right-hand side in the Develop module. It's the second tool from the right. It's a circle with a right-pointing arrow in it, so you click that icon to activate it, and you'll see the brush controls. The controls are pretty simple. We've got size, which is how big the brush is. You can change the size of the brush using the slider there, or I prefer to use the scroll wheel on my mouse so I can make my brush quickly larger and smaller. That is designated by the inner circle of the icon here. The outer circle of the icon is, or the cursor control, excuse me, is the feather, the soft edge of the brush. So you've got two circles here. The inner side one is the hard edge, and the outside is the softer edge. I generally leave my feather for this brush at 50%. So I found that that's a pretty good amount. It works in just about every situation. I hardly ever change from that. The opacity slider, the next slider down, that is after you brush, and this is basically what this is. This is a brush tool. Think of it like a can of spray paint. So you just click and hold, and then you drag where you want to make a change. The opacity slider applies to the original and how much of the brush covers the original. So when the opacity is at 100, that means there is nothing left of the original. Anything less than 100 means there will be something of the original left behind after you brush. For me, generally on this, in most situations, and the ones we're going to cover today, I leave the opacity at 100. About the only time I turn that down is if I'm doing facial retouching, portrait retouching. I might lower that a little bit, just depending on the situation. That's a future video though. All right, so let's do spot removal. I like to call this tool the distraction removal tool. It gets rid of those things that you maybe didn't see when you were taking the photo, you didn't notice, you couldn't move, you didn't want to stop the flow of photo taking, which often happens at events such as this wedding. So a couple little things in this photo. We'll do the first one really quick and easy. It's this little I think it's probably a little leaf or something on the ground right here behind the groom's shoe. So I'm just gonna, there's multiple ways to use this tool. One way is just a single click, and then here's what happens. With that single click, the area you clicked is called the target. Lightroom will automatically choose an area in the photo that it thinks will be a good replacement, and that's called the source. You can see they're linked together by this arrow pointing to the target from the source. If you don't like the way it replaces here, you can move this to a different location, and you'll see the preview showing you what those combinations of changes looks like. So I'm just going to leave it there. That's good. It basically disappears. So that's quite nice. There's two modes that this tool can work in. By default, this tool works in what's called heal mode. That's over here at the top of the panel controls. Heal, what that does is it combines some of the target area surrounding content with the source content and does this magic called content aware fill, and creates a new texture here. If you switch to clone, what you get is exact copy of the source to the target where you clicked, where you drew. So for example, if this should be a clone of that. Let's see if it's going to take a moment. There we go. So that's an exact copy of that right there. You can even see it if I do this area here, this little bit of a white spot on the ground. It will exactly copy that over here. If I switch to the heel mode, you'll see that it does a better job of blending those two areas together. It's still not great here, but it depends. This is where the magic comes in. Every once in a while, it kind of grabs more of the texture originally than that of the source than you originally want. So I'm going to move this a little bit, get it back to non-specific, and away we go. So that's a one click. So it's basically a spot you're getting rid of. And now let's get to the big distraction in this photo, this microphone cable on the ground. I want to get rid of that. So I won't do that with a single click. I'll do that with a brushing motion. So my strategy for using the spot removal brush is I make the brush bigger than the widest part that I need to cover, and I'll just try and do it with one single brush stroke. So let me show you how that works. So I usually start at the left. I'll just start at the left, click and hold, and I'll start drawing. And the tool gives you this white opaque area to indicate where it's doing its work. Unfortunately, you can't see what's happening underneath, and that's all right. So I've just covered the area completely, and now I'm going to let go, and Lightroom will do some magic and select a source for me. And in a moment, boom, it replaces that cable on the ground with just a texture combination of this source area, and it disappears. So there we go. The spot removal tool is pretty wonderful. I use it quite a bit. Basically, it's like having Photoshop, a very light version of Photoshop that you can learn in about 5 minutes inside of a Lightroom. So it's really, really powerful, but it does have its limits. I'll discuss the limits in a minute. Where it works the best is in areas like this floor, which is a non-specific, non-repeating pattern. So it's very organic. So it works on like floors and granite, concrete, asphalt, grass, sky, sometimes leaves and flowers. Actually, I'll show you that in the last one we're going to do. So let's go to another photo here, very similar. A couple little spots to get rid of, and then a couple big things to get rid of. So, and I'll show you a couple tricks to get rid of. So here's what we want to get rid of. This spot up here. Background's very blurry, so anything that kind of looks specific will draw your attention and becomes a distraction. I want everybody to see her shoes and just concentrate on that. So we're going to get rid of those two little spots. We're going to get rid of in the corner here, this table leg and this chair leg that that's kind of poking out of her dress. So we'll start with the easy ones. I'm going to turn the spot removal back on. There we go. My computer's being a little slow because it's doing lots of work. The spot removal tool is quite labor intensive for the computer. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to click once here. I have my brush size set to just larger than the area that I want to cover, so a single click should do it. It'll grab a source for me. That one's got a little bit of a repeating pattern going on, so I'm going to move it just a little bit to hopefully kind of avoid that pattern. Then I'm going to go back down to this spot in the lower right corner and click once there as well. Make my brush just a little bit smaller. And the more you use this tool, it'll be second nature how you size the brush and what you need to do to get a good source and target. All right, so that's good. I'm going to go a little larger here because I'm going to brush a little bit in this corner, and I'm just going to be I'm brushing, making sure I get the middle covered so that I don't get any smudging going on. That's another place that this tool doesn't work very well. You can see I've got a repeating pattern here, so I've got this stripe right here, and it's right there as well. So I'm going to move this over here into this open area, hopefully with no repeating patterns showing up, and let go. Lightroom's going to do a moment to think for a minute, and that's much better there in the corner. Last but not least, I want to get rid of this little chair leg that's creating a distraction. It doesn't need to be there for the photo. In a perfect world, you can believe she's sitting down or maybe just standing on one leg. We don't need the. It just is an awkward moment, little bit of metal in a very lovely little photo. So I'm going to click once again, and this time's a little trickier because the end of the chair leg intersects her dress. So I have to find a place where I can match the patterns of her dress to the chair leg, and so I'm moving very slowly here to see if I can get a good pattern here. Oops, then you see, so I'm getting a little smudge here. That's where different tones are kind of fighting each other. So I'm going to probably have to redo this. I'm going to let go, and then I'm going to hit delete. That's how you can get rid of a spot. By the way, while we're here, let's discuss the interface. Where I've single clicked, you'll get a circle indicating where you clicked. So there's two circles, and then wherever I've brushed, so I've used it with a click and hold and move around, you get a gray pin, a gray dot showing where that is. You can edit these very easily afterwards by clicking on them to activate the one you would like to edit, either or, like I'm going to do here, just click the delete key and that'll go away. All right, let's try this again. So I'm going to go with a little bit smaller brush. Watch my puff of smoke animation. So I'm going to go with smaller brush, and I'm going to turn my feather down a little bit, see if that's going to help me just a little bit. So maybe about 35 on the feather. And a smaller brush, and I'm going to just go straight up and just kind of get to the bottom there. Let's see if that gives me a little bit smaller, more manageable area that I can get without a smudge. So I'm pulling in part of the dress there that isn't helpful. Getting a little bit of that smudge going on. So sometimes when you're using this spot removal, you know, I've tried brushing and it just isn't working. So if one way isn't working, try the other way. So I'm going to go to a little bit larger brush, and I'm just going to do a single click. And I think this is going to work better, because I looked at my original image and this is what I did. So I had forgotten how I had done this. All right, so I'm just slowly moving this around, looking at the edges, trying to make it hide and disappear. And there we go. So when you're all done with the spot removal tool, you can click on the done button, see your work without the little icons showing. And here's before, where we started with all the spots showing. There we go. So there's a preview of what it looks like without the spot removal. And if we turn the spot removal back on, so you can see what it looks like when they're gone. So really, really powerful. Great way to simplify images that might have some distractions in the background. It's pretty powerful, but it does have its limits. Like I struggled a little bit here along the hem of the dress with the chair leg sticking out. And let me show you one place where it really does not work very well at all. This tool doesn't work very well with repeating geometric shapes. The reason for that is when you draw an area with the brush, you need a source that is exactly the same size, shape, and orientation to match and grab from. So let me give you an example here where it doesn't work very well. So I really like this image. I do like this one window that's different. You have repetition and then something that's different. That's always creates a story. But if I wanted to get rid of it and use the spot removal tool to try and do it, obviously one of the first things we can see is I'm drawing with a circle to cover a rectangular area, and that's going to make a problem probably already. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to make my brush relatively small, and I'm going to draw across here and cover the area that I want to replace. And then Lightroom is going to go ahead and grab something. Now, why this doesn't work is it doesn't line up, because it's the perspective is changed, so the height is different. So if I try and grab from along here where the perspective is the same, you'll see that we get some smudging going on. where colors and textures don't meet. The angle is different on the. I mean, that's not bad, but the angle's wrong on that connecting piece. So spot removal doesn't work well in this kind of situation. It's when the repeating patterns, it's pretty hard unless you're looking straight down at it, so there's no perspective. It's pretty hard to do any kind of spot removal to make it work to replace the area you're trying to fix. The better bet is to hop into Photoshop if you know that, and do the more major pixel surgery over there. So spot removal, not so good. Repeating patterns with perspectives, not so good. So let's go one more photo to show you really how powerful this can be and how relatively easy it can be to use to really strengthen a photo. So in this image of Heather walking with her mom at the wedding, the venue had these old gas station pumps outside, and they're sticking up above this hedge here, quite a big distraction. Also, I've got this light pole, power pole, or maybe it's a cell phone tower pole with conduit sticking up. So here's where spot removal works really well. So I'm gonna make a brush that's relatively large. We'll start over here, and I'm just gonna click to cover that. And then Lightroom again is going to automatically pick an area, a very bad area in this case, that doesn't match at all. But the neat thing is I can move that, change that location of where it's grabbing information to make the change. And I'm doing that now, and I'm just slowly nudging this, and watch the hedge highlight line up as I move this slowly, and keep moving just a little bit more. Wait for it to catch up as my computer's thinking, and there we go. So number one is done. Now, fortunately, Heather's head wasn't actually connected to this one over here, because that would create a bigger problem to try and replace. So again, just a brush that's big enough to cover that area. So just right there, click. And let's see where I'm going to grab a source from. I'm going to have to trick this angle a little bit, but there we go. So that's gone. Oop, I went a little too high, so the edge isn't straight. Let me just go down just a little bit lower. Come on. Go. I think that's better. And then, no, now it's too high. I got some lag here with my computer recording the screen. Hold on just a minute. Let me move that back up a little bit. Too much. Just down right there. We'll let it go. We'll call it good. Thinking, thinking, thinking. Lots of math. Lots and lots of math. If you have a fast computer, that is a big, big help. Yes, Michael needs to upgrade his computer. I know. All right, so we're going to do this area here. I'm going to probably do this in a couple passes. So I'll just click and hold. I'm going to brush here. I'm going to stop just above the edge, so I don't need to sample from that at all. Grabbed a silly spot. Lightroom did automatically over here. It's not what I want. I just want some of this tree, leaf, and branch texture. So just pull it down just a little bit. Pull it down just a little bit more. Come on, there we are. Something like that, I think. Again, I'm lagging behind a little bit. Okay. And then I've still got just a little bit of silver pointing through, so I'm going to click right here and just brush a little bit. If it lets me, there we go. And it's going to grab from up above, and that's better. I'm going to move my source here, my target, excuse me, down just a little bit. Not too much, because mom's head's in the way. So that's a lot better. A lot better than where we started. So again, we'll turn that off real quick so you can see where we started. Hide the brush, the spot removal brush, distraction removal brush. There's where we started with those things that are drawing your attention, the gas station top, gas pumps tops, and the conduit. Turn it back on, hide those things, turn off the spot removal tool, and oops, yeah, there we go. So pretty easy. Some of the power of Photoshop inside of Lightroom with the spot removal tool to make some replacement edits. Again, it works well on organic things like this, the shrubs here, and grass, and concrete, and asphalt, and sky, that kind of stuff. Not so good on man-made things that have repeating patterns, especially if there's any perspective involved. So use the spot removal tool. As I'm taking photos, I'm often thinking when I notice something, should I move it now, or can I move it in software? Sometimes it's easier, especially if you're at an event, to just keep taking photos and be aware of how to use this tool so you can fix it later on. So that's the spot removal tool in Adobe Lightroom Classic. I hope it's been helpful. It's a very, very powerful tool. If you do have questions, please leave them in the comments below, or send me an email to have further conversation. Look forward to continuing this series with the next lesson, which will be spot removal brush. Nope, that's what we just did. The next lesson, excuse me, is the adjustment brush. So until we meet again.